We begin the program with Senate Democratic Whip Richard Durbin of Illinois. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Senate's going home for a month-long recess, work period, if you will. Health care still unsettled. It would appear that the opponents have the momentum now. You're in trouble in health care, aren't you?
I don't think we are. And what we find is that although there's been a lot of misinformation out there, when the voters across America, all stripes, hear the basic goals of health care reform, they come back.
So you think all this will be good for the Democrats?
It will be. I think it will be because of two things. First, the president. Most presidents can't wait for Congress to leave town. They own the pulpit. They don't have to compete for airspace or print. They really dominate the news. And members will go back in their districts and states and meet with people and talk about these issues directly.
Do you think the Senate Finance Committee will report out a bipartisan bill by September 15th?
Well, Max Baucus has put all of his effort and energy into this. He feels confident, and if he feels good about it, then I do too.
Well, if they don't, do you think it's likely then the Senate will go the so-called reconciliation process? Is that a probability if the Finance Committee doesn't?
I wouldn't put it in the probable status, but I'd put it in the possible status. We left that opening with the budget resolution. And I've heard the president say in a meeting with the leaders of both political parties, obviously, we're going to keep reconciliation as an option. We'd rather not go that route. Let's try to do something in a bipartisan way.
A lot depends on whether the Finance Committee can get something out of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. With a measure that contains not what they call a robust public option, but some sort of cooperative, achieve the objectives of creating competitive pressures on the private insurers. You seem to say the other day you wouldn't rule out voting for that.
What I've said is that if that bill coming out of the Senate isn't everything that I want it to be, I might still support it because I don't want this process to stop.
So you're flexible.
This is a once-in-a-political-lifetime opportunity, and I don't want to see it die in the Senate if it isn't perfect by every senator's standards.
Let me ask one other provision the Senate Finance Committee is apparently close to approving, which is slapping a 35% tax on the so-called Cadillac employer health insurance plans, those over $21,000. Could you support something like that?
The number is important in terms of what the value of the plan is, and whether it is a tax on the insurance companies or the person being insured makes a big difference. If it's on the companies and the level of the tax is one that I can live with, I think that's an appropriate way to approach it.
Would seem to be one you might be able to live with?
I'd like to see that up a little bit higher.
A little bit higher. There was a story, as you know, a couple days ago in the New York Times that said that the White House had made a deal with the drug companies that they were going to oppose Congress imposing any further cost savings in the drug area. The Senate met the other day with David Axelrod, the president's chief advisor. The issue came up. What did he tell you?
He told us no. There was no agreement in that regard. And as far as he was concerned, there's no deal that includes that. Now, there's a difference of opinion, obviously. Pharma, represented by former Congressman Billy Tozan, said we thought we had that understanding. So at this moment in time, I don't think many, if any of us, feel bound by any understanding or agreement along those lines.
Senator, let me just go back to one health care question, because you are a champion of many liberal causes in the Senate. Some people have wondered if this bill's compromised too much that you'll lose liberals. I gather from what you said earlier that you're going to urge your fellow liberals, fellow progressives, to keep it open, but to be flexible in this. Don't let the perfect, I guess, be the enemy of the good.
Exactly. And I don't know if I'll be successful. We miss Ted Kennedy. His voice at this moment would make such a difference in terms of what the bill looks like and gathering us together and moving us forward in the right direction. But many of us who are trying to carry on in his tradition want to make certain that as you said, the best isn't the enemy of the good. That at the end of the day, we bring more people into coverage. At the end of the day, we have a fairer health care system for working and middle-class families.
And let me shift to another subject. What are the odds that the Senate will approve a cap-and-trade legislation before President Obama goes to the Copenhagen Conference on Global Warming in December?
We want to, and the President has urged us to do this so that we'll have credibility at Copenhagen and we can move forward on this important issue about clean energy and a clean environment. But I have to be honest with you, as the whip, I count the votes and I count the days in the week and I look at this rule book in the Senate and think this is not an easy lift. I think we can still do it, but it's a question of timing.
The Senate, an historic vote this week, confirmed Judge Sonia Sotomayor for the High Court. Over three-quarters of Republicans opposed her.
Well, it's unfortunate because I don't know that you could have asked for much more of a nominee to the Supreme Court. An extraordinary life story, great academic achievement, prosecutorial background, corporate litigator, then to be appointed to the court by a Republican president, promoted by a Democratic president, handled her hearing extraordinarily well, and yet the overwhelming majority of Republicans still opposed her. I really want to take my hat off to the 9 Republican senators who had the courage to step up.
You know what they say? Say, gosh, the majority of Democrats, including Dick Durbin, opposed Sam Alito, John Roberts. This is just a partisan, politicized process. This is no different than those votes.
Well, each of these is a vote of conscience, and I'm not questioning the motives of my colleagues on the Republican side, but I really thought it's hard to think of what more you could have asked of this woman. I thought she did a great job. I understand the politics of the moment, but I can't think of a candidate with more qualifications.
Let me turn to another subject. The Obama administration has rebuffed calls for any kind of Truth and Reconciliation Commission on the torture issue. Do you have any sense they might be softening on that?
I know that there's some speculation that the Attorney General is taking another look at this, and I think he should, an honest look at this. There are 2 investigations underway, initiated by the Bush administration. The first investigation relates to the destruction of videotapes of interrogations. That has to be completed. The second is an investigation by the Office of Professional Responsibility, the Department of Justice, as to whether any of the attorneys giving advice on torture violated ethical standards. That is another ongoing investigation to be reported. I think as this information comes in from the Bush-era investigations, it'll be an opportunity to judge whether we should go forward. I don't think we should rule it out.
Do you have a sense that, do you think that Eric Holder should appoint a special prosecutor now?
I wouldn't go so far as to say special prosecutor, but I would urge him, based on the findings of those 2 Bush administration investigations, to really step back and consider whether we should do more.
One more question. Are you worried that your good friend President Obama's poll ratings have slipped rather dramatically in the last couple of months?
They have gone down, but historically presidents, after the honeymoon, start coming back down to earth. I still have the greatest confidence in this man. I mean, I've heard him say things to us as senators which really encourage me and tell me that my early inclinations to support him were the right ones.
Senator Durbin, I hope you have a happy and a restful August.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for joining us. When we come back,